This last 30 minutes, we're going to be covering different equipment that you would use to shoot these bad boys over here. And you could pan over there and see. These are the bows that we used today and we've shown today. So how do you shoot them, and the equipment that you need to is actually going to be on this table behind us right here, as well as the different bag targets that you could purchase locally at your local sporting goods store. Whether you want to do backyard shooting, target shooting, testing out your broadheads for hunters and stuff like that. So we got the different targets that we'll go touch on as well. The different arrows, I'll touch on that, and then we'll go into the adaptive equipment. So Steve, you're the man.
Well, as the recurve guy, I'm going to start over here on the table, and the first thing that you're going to see is I took off my chest protector. This is something that people tend to think they don't need, but the truth is, when this chest protector is on, it keeps your shirt from being caught by the string. Sometimes people wear a loose shirt, and so when this comes by, your string comes into here, and it won't cause your string to catch, which can cause pain to you, and your arrow is going to be weak and wobble down the range. Even the Olympic shooters, etc., they all wear a chest protector. This one's probably 20 years old. The one that Jeremy has here from Easton Archery is slightly padded, but again, you want to get it in your size, small, medium, and large, and extra large. You can also get these made custom. People make them in different colors and leathers and things like that. So a chest protector, you're not going to want it until you hurt yourself. Then you're going to say, oh, should have had it. Related still to protective equipment, on Jeremy's arm, you saw his arm guard, which goes like this, and it's going to go on the thickest part of your forearm. And again, if the string gets away from you, if you have a sloppy release, that string is going to go laterally left and right, and in case it encounters your flesh, you will not bruise. Mine is a little different. Again, mine's made by Easton. It's a little bit thicker. I like that. Sometimes I get sloppy and I hit my arm back here. And then for people, especially for women who are double jointed, I met one yesterday. Some arm guards are very long, and literally this will cover. It'll really protect kids, and if you're working with your kids, let me say this, kids don't like pain, I understand that. So if you have a chance for your child, get a long arm guard, because all they're going to do is they're going to swing their arm, and that string's going to catch their elbow and give them a welt, and they're not going to have fun. So a long arm guard is always better than no arm guard at all. Okay, if you're going to have a choice of short or long, get long. The other kind of hunting arm guard would be this is a 2-ply leather arm guard. It's got suede on the inside, more of the chrome leather on the out, and this will fit around your arm again. Put it around, the laces come around, and you put it where you need to. The longbow guys and the traditional folks, they prefer the leather look, and so, okay, that's cool. As long as the old term for these used to be called bracers. Back in Old English, when the Englishmen were killing the French with their longbows, everybody had a bracer. The bracer is fighting me. Now, again, under the part of the protective equipment for a recurve, and staying with the traditional, this is a 3-finger glove. They come in right and left-handed. Your first, second, and third finger will go in here. And what this lets you do, especially for hunting, it's going to let you grab the bowstring. I'm going to demo here, obviously. You're going to grab the bowstring, and it protects the tips of your fingers from that string. If you're pulling 35, 40 pounds, you're going to feel it in your fingertips. But at the same time, because it's 3 split fingers, you have finger dexterity, so you can still pick things up. If you drop something, you can easily use your fingers to pick it up. The next thing for pulling on your string, Jeremy demoed with this. This is a 2-ply tab, finger tab, and it goes, your middle finger goes through the loop, and so when you finish, this will protect all 3 fingers, and the string will lay right there in the curl. And then again, when you open your hand, this will stay with you and the string will fly true. For those of you who are into target archery, this is an example of it's a little more fancy tab. It has a split here so the arrow goes here. It has a spacer for your finger so that you don't pinch the arrow. Sometimes people, when they pull back, these 2 fingers close and all of a sudden the arrow is rising up. And so again, you put 1 finger through here. The spacer keeps the fingers from going together. And this is called a ledge. What that ledge does is you can adjust it. For a target shooter, you're going to anchor on your jaw. And so this lets you, when you feel the ledge here, in the same spot, you know you've arrived. You know you're there. So the ledges are, most people use the ledge. It gives them something to feel. Now, finger slings. When Jeremy did his demo, this is his Captain America finger sling, and I say finger because it's going to go around the bow, and 1 loop is the thumb and 1 is the first finger, and the bow handle is going to be in here. So when the bow jumps a little, it won't hit the ground, but that way he doesn't have to have a death grip on that bow. For what I had a while ago, as I said, is made by Rick Stonebreaker. It's just a piece of paracord. This is a long one because it attaches to your, like I showed you earlier, it attaches to your wrist, and then it comes around the bow and goes on a finger like that. Some people, for about $3, sometimes $5, you can get what we call a finger sling made, and it literally looks like this on both ends. So it just, one will go here, and there'll be a small one on the other on your thumb, and it's less bulky. I like this one. For some reason, I just like it loose on my wrist. Now, as far as the next thing over here, let's see, tab, tab, tab. Oh, piece of equipment here that everybody's going to want to have. This is a set of hex keys, especially if you have a compound bow and a sight. If you have a recurve and a sight, you're going to be using these different dimensional hex keys on your bow. You're going to loosen things, you're going to tighten things. Bows have a lot of vibration, things come loose. In a tournament I had one, my front sight came off one time. When I shot, the sight flew out 8 feet, and luckily a guy behind me said, "Steve, you got 30 seconds," and I was able to grab it off the ground and shoot. And then we all laughed. So you're going to want one of these. As far as Jeremy is going to talk about the releases right now.
Yeah.
And the releases come in different flavors.
Want to go over the targets before?
Okay, before I go to that, let's do the bag targets. This particular target here, it's attached to the table. This is a broadhead target. If you're in a store, Bass Pro or Cabela's or Academy, the foam is horizontal, and as I was saying, on this particular target, this is made where you can pull your broadheads out. So a lot of hunters have one of these in the backyard. It's also, as you can see, compact enough to put in your truck or your four-wheel drive, whatever you use, your 4Runner, to take to camp, because people will get to camp, they'll forget to take a little target with them. You can even get a smaller target like this, although this is more of a not a broadhead target, but they forget to take a target, and so all of a sudden they're shooting their broadheads into the dirt or something there, and a cactus pad. I know in South Texas you get sticky stuff on your arrows when you hit that cactus pad. So you do want one of these if you're a hunter. You want some sort of target you shoot broadheads with. On the table behind me, there's actually two targets we use a lot at Fort Sam. These are Morel targets, the square ones here. They are only good, people, for up to about a 40-pound bow with regular arrows. Any faster or a compound bow, the arrow will go zippity-doo-dah through that bag target in the back. And so in this case, these are beginner targets. In front of it, what we have is we've got some, these look like ethafoam targets, and we've stacked these in front because it's easier to put the paper target on the ethafoam than it is on this backing here, the NASP target. Now, if you have a child who is in the school system, and since it says NASP, this is the National Organization for School Archery in the Schools, and so that's the target they'll be using in the schools, the NASP approved target. Just want to give you that idea. Behind this, this is the target you have, and you're a compound shooter, you can buy a pad. Here's a really thick pad. I am so glad, folks, this is not a bombing or a strafing run. We will all die a long time ago. So you can buy this pad, and it goes behind, and it'll stop your target arrows from the compound. Now we're going to move to the releases.
Sorry guys, I guess all the Carter jets are coming back in from their runs today. So real quick, we'll cover mechanical releases for a compound bow. The three basic types that you're going to come across. The first one you probably come across, whether you're a target shooter or a hunter or a youth archer, someone just getting into archery, is a wrist release like this. It's a trigger release, so you actuate it with your trigger finger, and it wraps around your wrist like such, and then you would actuate it like such. This is the release our demonstrator shooting in a compound was using earlier. Now when you start elevating your skill set, maybe a competitive archer or a hunter, you might see a thumb release. And what a thumb release is, your basic thumb release is the one I use for competitions. Your thumb release you would lock it in place and you would hook it onto your D-loop from a compound bow. To actuate it, you would actually have to push down, and let's see if you can hear that click. And that will open up the gate for you. So lock it down, hook it on, push down, and actuate. The last release that we're going to cover is a back tension or a hinge release. So there's a lot of jets coming in. So it looks very similar to the thumb release, but the way it actuates is there is no trigger. This is not a trigger. This does nothing. The way it actuates is it rolls over that hinge and allows it to release itself. So putting it on a D-loop, as you're squeezing your shoulder blades and going into your shot process to release, the hinge will roll forward and it opens up the gate to fire. So again, it will roll forward and actuate, and that's how you fire the hinge with your back tension. So before we get into adaptive archery, let me go over arrow selections. So whether you're shooting target archery, compound or recurve, those are the factors when you're selecting archery. Okay, selecting your arrows. So first you got to know your draw weight that you're working with from your bows. Huh?
You may hold the quiver?
I got it. First you got to know the draw weight of your quivers, of your bow, and your draw length. That will get you the spine selection for your arrow. It's very important to get the right spine. Too weak of a spine and too powerful of a bow, it could actually cause damage to the arrow. Worst case scenario, blow up in the air or in your face and cause damage to your bow and yourself. So make sure you get the right arrows, okay? Huh?
Oh, I turned the camera around by accident.
Oh, I guess Brad wanted to be in the camera. So make sure you get the right arrows. So for light poundage bows, we're talking about recurve bows under 30 pounds or your Genesis bows that are under 20 pounds. These Genesis arrows are really good arrows to use. Long enough for your youth shooters, so your teenagers, maybe some smaller frame adults, but good arrows. Next, if you have really small children and light poundage bows, I'm talking about bows under 10 pounds, these Easton Tribute arrows are decent arrows to shoot. They are aluminum, so are those Genesis arrows. They're very small in length, comparing arrow to arrow, Genesis arrow to the Tribute arrow. It's a few inches shorter. So that'll be for your youth shooters. Now, recurve shooters, your indoor competitive shooters to your hunters. So your recurve shooters indoor will probably use a fatter arrow. This is also aluminum, but with feathers. They're more forgiving. So if you're shooting a single spot target, they could stack up on that target a lot tighter without deflecting or bouncing out because they hit the other arrow. So really good arrows for indoor. And you can actually use this for compounders or recurvers. Really good arrows. Another micro diameter that you might see, again, these have feathers on it because they are more forgiving. You could stack a lot tighter group with feathers without deflecting them. And then for your outdoor recurve archers, we have something called spin wings. So these spin and open up as they fly in the air and create more rotation for stabilization, because recurvers typically shoot a longer distance when competing than our compound shooters. So It's the difference between compounders shooting 50 meters, recurvers shooting 70 meters. So stabilization is key, and these spin wings cause the arrow to spin and stabilize more. Now your competition, your compound bows, you have your hunting arrows. These are carbon fiber arrows, and then this is another set of hunting arrows, longer vanes. These are plastic vanes now. For compound, we go into the plastic vanes, and these are longer because we want them to stabilize with mechanical broadheads or just broadheads in general. So these are a little longer, and if I could get the boom, these guys are here. So now your competition archer, your competitive compounder shooting 50 meters will use an arrow identical to this, if not this arrow. Difference is they will more than likely use a plastic vane, same profile, same size and everything. I believe this is a 2-inch feather, but instead of it being feathered, they would use a plastic vane, fletching versus the feather vanes. So identical arrow, just plastic fletching on it for your competitive compound shooter. Now moving into adaptive archery, some of the things that you might see.
My battery's going low, so.
Okay, we'll try to do this fast. The first and the most common thing you will see is someone shooting with a mouth tab. So right here in this section, you can get as close in. We have examples of different type of material that is used for mouth tabs, from climbing rope to 550 cord to micro diameter rope, which I've weaved a nice little bite down mouth tab for it. You would attach this to your string, to a dog, a very thin, very small dog leash. This is really good material. If you cut it to the length you want it and sew it, that gives a really strong, long-lasting material bite down surface for a mouth tab. Individuals in wheelchairs that need to strap themselves down can use a gait belt, secure themselves to their chair. Individuals that have issues with dexterity, grip on their hand, think of a quadriplegic, they could use a quad glove to actually strap the equipment to their hands. Different type of releases. These releases can be mounted onto a shoulder rig or a strap, so you could use it if you have a one-armed archer. This is actually manufactured, the fingerless release by Trueball, and this is Stan's first wrist release. I just removed the wrist strap so it could be mounted onto a shoulder harness. Another way to getting someone shooting fast is a stool. Whether they have poor balance or they need to be seated because of injury, getting them a right stool is pretty important, because you can sit down and we'll get it from this side. As you can see with this stool, I'm not sitting so low that it's a little awkward for me. This is actually a dove hunting stool. It sits fairly high, and it allows me to have the clearance down below. So I have a fairly long recurve, and I still have that clearance from my bottom limb, which is important when you're shooting from a seated position, whether you're shooting from a stool or shooting from a wheelchair. Especially with a wheelchair, you have that wheel, your side wheel there. So you want to make sure you got the clearance right down here and when you're shooting. Okay, so a stool is another way to get someone shooting fast. There are VI stands for visually impaired archers that you could create. Most of the stuff, adaptive archery wise, is thinking outside the box. So I want to say there's only one thing actually manufactured for adaptive archery, but everything else is thinking outside the box and creating it. So if you have any questions on how to create something for adaptive archery, or you're an adaptive archer yourself and you're new to the sport and you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. So we'll end it, and thank you for joining us.